Paul Burkett, Tom Hitchcock, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Tom, on this lovely Sunday afternoon.
It is a lovely Sunday afternoon. And as it says in your background, which is not pixelating, so I know it's real, life is good.
Yeah, definitely over my left shoulder. What do you reckon?
That's it. It's, what a lovely thing just to hit your grey matter with every day, just to remind yourself of the things that we could be appreciative of. So anyway, Paul, we've known each other for a period of time, but our paths have crossed before. Okay, and I've actually just done an episode where I've had the same situations. We know each other quite well on that basis, albeit our paths crossed before, but they didn't actually really cross before as well. So kind of got a weird intertwined past. But people listening to this, they don't know you, they don't know our history. So the floor is yours, mate. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I guess let's go there, Tom. Both you and I worked in a direct sales business. That was I guess a global business. I think you were the UK operation, where I was kind of down under. It was an industry that I know that you were in for a period of time and then went on with your career. It was an industry that I kind of got into, and I think I stayed in it for a very, very long time. A lot of people go into sales for either 3 days, for 3 weeks, for 3 months, maybe 3 years max. But, I was in the industry for, getting on for nearly 25 years. So I made a real career out of that time in direct sales. It wasn't something, Tom, that I think I meant to do. I know for myself growing up, I always wanted to be a soldier. That was all I ever thought about since probably the age of 12, 13, was joining the British Army. And that was all I was focused on, to be fair, even all the way through school. And even then at uni, I was going to go on and get a commission into the British Army. I had some time before going into the British Army. I had about 6 months before doing my time at Sandhurst. So I thought I could just come backpacking. Spent a bunch of time going through Southeast Asia, had a really good time, spent all of my money. So when I got to Australia, I needed to get a job. I had a job with a guy called Harry the Hirer in Melbourne very briefly for a couple of days. And then I went, manual labor is not for me. And then at the hostel, there was a guy who was doing some door-to-door sales for a company called Optus. And, he reckons he was making lots of money. He kept coming home every night with 6 packs of beers. And I remember one night, sitting on the balcony, he was telling me all about this Optus sales job and how I could make lots of money. I wasn't convinced, to be honest with you, Tom. But I'm sure he sweetened the deal because he said, look, come along to a cricket match tomorrow. And, I reckon I can get you in for free, and I might even be able to get you a couple of free beers. So he mentioned free twice. And for any backpackers who've got no money, free. I'm like, I'm in. I think we downed that 6-pack that night and we celebrated with a box of goon at the hostel. Needless to say, the next day he came into this office. It was actually Bridge Road in Richmond. We went to this office and everyone got their face painted, and it was a really kind of surreal environment with lots of English lager louts, to be fair, at the time. And then we wandered off down to the MCG in Victoria. I think we stopped at every pub on the way to the cricket match. So I think I was half drunk by the time I got there. But yeah, true to form, every single pub we went into, there was always people at the bar before me. I was always hanging back, as you do when you got no money. And sure enough, I kept getting handed a beer. And this continued all day. We went to the cricket match. I'm sure people had no clue who I was because, everyone had their face painted with the George's Cross. And, I just sat in this group and, every time I'd be handing beers along, and there was always seemed to be a spare one for me. So, that was kind of me meeting all these crazy salespeople. And, dare I say, the next day I was in for an observation day. I was recruited technically at that cricket match, came in for an observation day, went out in sales. I think I found sales pretty straightforward, Tom. I like talking to people. My wife always says I talk too much, but here, in sales, it was something that I could, it was probably a bit of a calling for me. And went on to do really well in that organization, Tom. I think I got promoted into, they called it a management role within about 18 weeks. I got sponsored, and all those previous goals of joining the military all got put to the side. And went on to run a business, and and that was it. For 20 years later, I blinked. So yeah, that was an interesting ride. I enjoyed my time in the sales. In fact, I really enjoyed it, and I think because I enjoyed it, I was really good at it, and then because I was good at it, I really enjoyed it. So there was a direct correlation. A lot of people got into it. I saw people come and go, and I just kind of kept working at it, Tom.
Love it. And it's interesting what you say about your military aspirations. Okay. And I think you know where I'm going with this, but when I was talking about this in my previous podcast, I talked about the same organization, which, thousands of people know this organization, but millions of people don't. Okay. But when I talk about this organization, when I was talking about it on the other podcast, okay, I talked about it as if it should be something that would qualify for national service. So my son's 11 now. If he turned around to me on his first job and said, "Dad, I've just done something called an observation day. I'm really excited." I wouldn't discourage him. I would encourage, because I know the self-learning that he will find by going through these processes, okay, and what he'll learn and how that will bode for him later on in life. So I do classify, which was then Cobra, to give it a decent stint and to push those boundaries and learn yourself. It is a form of national service.
Yeah, look, I think what you learn during that time, self-awareness, communication skills, stuff they don't teach you at school, like, so many things, even mindset, attitude. Nowadays, everyone, there's no such thing as a winner. Everyone, there's no winners and losers. Life's, we try to make society and make, I've got 5 children, so I know about this. We want to protect our children. We don't want it to be too tough on them, but sadly, life is tough. There are winners and losers in life, and I know that the one thing about sales is you have to win every day, and every day, especially getting paid commission, which is I think how we both got paid back in the day. If you didn't sell, you weren't eating technically, or you were having major problems with your landlord. So it was a real driver. And going out, you had to work. Every day you went to a new territory, and every territory was different. So you were constantly adapting, and you're learning about yourself. You were definitely learning about others. You were learning about humans. I know for myself in sales, the fact is you're meeting everyone in society. You're meeting people, we've got lots of money in big houses. They seem to not really care about whatever you were doing. You meet people, in probably not so nice suburbs, and probably not very wealthy, but seem to have the most amount of time to talk to you. The poorer suburbs where we end up doing the most sales, because they were just willing to have a conversation. Not that they could probably afford those energy bills that we're going to sign them up for, those phone bills. But I found that those were the nicer people. And what I found was, the field, in a way, Tom, inspired me a little bit. I used to see the people in the nice houses, and I'd be looking over their shoulder, and you could see the water views behind them. And I found that kind of motivating me to want to be them. And when you go to the poorer suburbs, you go, well, I don't want to end up like this. So I think, going out and interacting with people can be very motivating to learn what you want to get out of life. But back on your point, I think what I learned was, as you said, being positive, right? I knew every day I was positive, sales happened. When I'm not feeling positive, sales didn't seem to happen, and just attacking every single day, you had to. And I certainly enjoyed that process of it. And I certainly look to my children now that you're right. I've talked to my 3 older ones about it, haven't quite got them out yet, but I've still got 2 more to go. So who knows? I might just have one direct sales guide out of those 5 coming through. Who knows?
Exactly. And it's transferable skills anyway. You can apply it into general business. You can apply it across almost every single role, because we all need to be good at selling ourselves. We all need to be able to self-regulate and face challenges with the right mindset. And I liked what you talked about there, because it's something that I focus. We all have tough days. We all have tough days. At the end of the day, like, you know what? I do not want to replicate that. Okay, I had the best attitude I could do, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm in a great mood about it. Now, it has had to take its toll, but the following day is a new day, and you can't carry that over. You must nip it in the bud fresh lens, fresh attitude, and go at it again.
Because that it's so funny you mentioned that, but that was the best thing about being in sales is, the next day is a brand new slate. No matter how well you did one day, the slate's wiped, and you rock up to the office, you've got to do it all over again. So you can't fluke it. You would always have good, those, we talked about good days. But, the challenging days, I know when you said bad days or slow days in sales, but they were that. It was just challenging. And some days were more challenging than others. Other days, you seemed to go on a bit of a roll. Life seemed to be good. Everything was good from the morning. And then the sales just would sometimes happen very naturally. And people are like, what happened with you today? What worked for you today? I'm like, in my mind, I'm going, I didn't do anything different. Instead, you're going, I worked the system. I did everything right. In my heart, I'm going, I don't know. It just happened. It was just one of those days that things just kind of went my way. I know my wife talks about, she calls it the zebra, black and white, and that's just life. You have your black, the black days and then the white days. And I think in sales, I never used to get too hung up on the days that didn't things to go too well, because I always knew there was a good day coming. There was, whether it be in sales, we had road trips or high performing weeks. So that's just kind of from a sales perspective. But then training and developing teams, I found that, some teams probably weren't as good as others, but I was only one hire away or one extra recruit away from changing that dynamic within my team. So, certainly, running a business and running a sales force, the same principles applied to the team that I'd learned actually doing it just in myself, just doing the general sales.
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge those ebbs and flows, so if you can look at business, we know it's a pendulum, it goes up and down, and how to factor this in when you look at the bigger picture, to maintain that mindset, the attitude, the ethos, the approach that maybe there's a dip there. This is how we fix it. This is what I can control. And then and vice versa, so keep it as smooth as possible.
Yeah, the one thing on that I watched over my career was I watched people always give up when things got tough, and in sales it was maybe a slow week, a tough week in sales, and people just kind of throw in the towel and that's it. Hey, this is not for me. And I'm like, well, if you'd made X amount of dollars this week, would you be giving up? And they go, of course not. I mean, so you're just determining your career and sticking around this industry based on your performance this week. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, let's break it down. What's going on with your performance this week? What's going on? Oh, my girlfriend just dumped me. Okay. Because so your girlfriend dumped you, that's going to have a knock-on effect on everything. And, there's always sometimes things outside of the day-to-day that would impact people and that would impact their career. And people would make massive decisions just based on how they felt one week. And, I always told myself I would give up when I was doing great and I didn't want to do the business anymore. And it was kind of funny. I didn't, I stuck at the industry for a very, very long time because, whenever I was doing great, it was kind of one of those things. So I told everyone about it. I couldn't do it because whenever I was wanting to give up, that meant I looked around and went, it's because of my circumstances. That's why I want to give up on this. But when things were really good, of course, I didn't want to give up either. So it's also one of those things, because I told about it so much. It was an industry I stuck at probably for so long, Tom.
Yeah, and you're quite right, because it's quite easy to throw the towel in on almost anything. I kind of feel that people are throwing the towel in a little bit too early these days, and a little bit, it's more common, more widespread, more accepted.
Correct.
It's like, well, perhaps this isn't for you and you should go and do something that's more physically skills. I think people look at living in their comfort zone. I think that's what they do. People tell you, they validate this is your comfort zone, this is where you belong, and that's it. And they live year after year on repeat, whereas what I can see, those that really do succeed and have achievements in life are literally searching for anything that makes them uncomfortable to generate that growth and to almost buck that trend from what people are advising them to do, and persevere.
Yeah, there was some really good advice, and funnily enough, it wasn't until recently, but it was actually during some of my recent military training, and it was like, get comfortable being uncomfortable. So if you're comfortable feeling that way, that's a good thing. If you're kind of, I hate it because I'm uncomfortable, that's going to be a problem, because more often than not in life, in business, and, even with, again, some of the training I went through recently, it wasn't great. It wasn't pleasant, but it was, character building. It was building kind of muscle memory to go on to say that you can actually work through it. The body can achieve so much. The mind will give up before the body. The mind will say, give up on this before the body ever will. And I think so often in life, we just look for that easier option, that someone else has taken the easy option. Well, maybe that's what we should be doing, but maybe you're not on that path. Maybe you're not on that journey. And even with myself, I know that, I had periods of my career that things went really well. I was, everything I touched seemed to work. And then I've gone through periods of my career where everything I've touched hasn't worked and everything hasn't succeeded. And you sort of question it, and maybe it's something you're doing wrong. But, I look back now and it's like, those were the times I learned the most. And just like the days that I probably didn't do the sales were where I actually learned more about selling. And in business, sometimes it's the failures and the setbacks that enable you to have the skill sets for the next chapter. And that's what I said about that uncomfortable feeling, that if you're in business and things are feeling a bit uncomfortable, maybe you're doing some soul searching. Maybe you're really looking at what you're doing in the business when you're actually feeling that sense of being uncomfortable. But embrace it, and as much as you can, try and smile at least and enjoy that process. I know it sounds weird, but certainly for me, being on a picket duty and pouring with rain, certainly, you invariably weren't alone when you were doing that, going through these tough times. So I'd always kind of have a bit of fun with whatever the person you're with. And, I'll say that, in business, as much as you can, to share that journey, and try and smile and enjoy it, even when you're actually having a bit of a tough time too.
Yep, I like that. And you touched on something that is quite topical for myself, because we talk a lot about mistakeology, which I did the TED talk on. It's a fascinating topic, but you lent into it quite a bit. We talk about failures, the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to grow, but I think I'd go one stage further. I said, given the opportunity to do so, I would KPI on mistakes, on failures. Yeah, because that only then can you really reframe those things and stop being so scared of making it. Really own it and literally rinse it up outside with every lesson that's there to be taken out of it, because we've got a different relationship with it then.
Yeah, look, I think how you deal with, if we call it failure, challenges, your attitude towards it, and I think just the attitude of embracing it. I've always said that, when you're having a tough time, kind of don't hang around and take photos. Just kind of stare down wherever that little light is in the tunnel, just stare at it, focus on it, and just put your foot down. Just don't hang around, just focus on that little light. There's always a light. Sometimes it may seem a long way away, but if you focus on it, everything's good. If you stand around and look at all the blackness and all the challenges, you ain't going to go anywhere. So, again, if you're going through hell, don't hang around, take photos, focus on the light at the end of the tunnel, and just go for it. It's kind of something I've always told myself. So certainly helped me.
It's a Winston Churchill quote, isn't it? When you're going through hell, keep going.
Ah, there you go. There, I was quoting Winston Churchill. Didn't even know. There we go. So I've been using that one for years. I thought, you used to think that sometimes you can convince you that you own it because you've used it so much. So there we go. Good old Winston.
Yes, thank you, Winston, for that one. So that's good. Okay, I already know the answer to this, but this is for the audience, really. So obviously, your childhood or as a young man, you wanted to be in the military. Sales stole you from the British Army, but you maintained it. You forged a good career, a good reputation, a great skill set from there. Did you get into the military in the end?
Well, yeah, we know the answer. So during COVID, I was, I started exiting out of sales, if I say sort of circa 7 years ago, and started diversifying into other industries. And, one that got me was fitness. I went to it was actually an F45 class that my admin at the time, Laura, was going to, and she's like, she's Irish. She said, come here, boss. You got to come here and, come and do this F45 class. It was quite a new thing. So I did this class and I thought I was going to die, Tom. You know, I'd seen a doctor earlier on in the week and he was like, get yourself fit. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get fit because, you know, the lifestyle of most salespeople wasn't great. Went to this class and I never do things by half. And at the end of the session, I said, right, Laura, I need to buy one of these things. So so sure enough, true to form, went out and got myself a gym. And really enjoyed that process. Then invested in another gym, a boxing chain called Hurt Locker, and was really into the fitness thing. And this is, again, if we go back circa 2019 now, and then it was like, boom, COVID. So all of my gyms were sort of shut down. I was actually training an individual in the park who was in the military. And, you know, I was training with him and coaching him and, you know, trying to work with him. And he was like, have you ever thought about doing this? I said, well, funny you should mention it. I have, but I think I'm way too old now. And he was like, you're not too old. And I went, come on. He went, well, you can do more burpees than me. And, you know, you're fit. So why not do it? So, yeah, I went through the process and circa 4 years ago, went into the Australian Army. And I'm a reserve officer in the Royal Australian Engineers.
Yeah, well, and you've got the obligatory haircut for it as well.
And the mo as well. So my wife's going, why have I got this moustache? But it's the mo is probably residual from my time.
Okay. All right. And before we wrap up then, I'd like to get you to reflect slightly. Okay. So you've had a colourful career. You're still smiling. I know there's things coming up, which we'll touch on another time, I guess. But if you were to go back and speak to your younger self, whisper in your ear and give yourself one bit of advice from all the lessons you've learned right now, what would that advice be?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd give myself a couple of bits of advice. I guess from a financial perspective, I would have told myself to invest more. Back in the day and in my business career, I invested a lot in people. And I probably didn't invest enough into myself in relation to my own personal development. And I would have invested more in me, and I would have spent more time on my development and my ability to grow and my training. I felt I knew it all. And I felt that was probably one of my problems for many years in business, because I wasn't willing and I wasn't open to learn. So I would have probably whispered in my ear, and one side would say, invest in yourself. The other would say, don't forget to invest in lots of property as well. I think I invested too much in the place I owned, and I should have just bought lots of property. So that was, but, certainly the word invest, comes to mind, Tom, but in myself and, into things. I think, again, my mistake was I probably put too much emphasis on individuals, and a lot of those individuals kind of let me down over the years. So, my advice, again, to my younger self would, and the other part that would be, just shit happens, and life will sometimes throw you curveballs, and it would have been great to have avoided them, but I know that every single one of those has defined me. You and I would not be here talking today if I hadn't been hit by one of those curveballs. My life would be very different. So I'm quite philosophical, and I think it's important to be philosophical and not to beat yourself up too much when things don't go your way, because you're actually on a path where you're on a journey, and no one knows where our journeys are. But where you are right now is where you're meant to be. And I acknowledge where I'm at right now is where I'm meant to be. I'm very lucky. I've got 3 amazing, intelligent, adult children, all at ANU in Canberra. I'm very proud of them and the adults that they've become. Through my life, I've been giving another shot at life. I have, 2 small children, Zayden, who's 18 months, Sasha, she's 4 years old, turning 18 already, and I'm just lucky that everything is meant that I am where I'm supposed to be. So in life and in business, sometimes we can get frustrated with things maybe aren't going to plan. Enjoy that journey and enjoy that process, because you never know where you're going to end up, and whatever's meant to be will be. And that's probably been my biggest thing I'll probably say to myself. So enjoy it, Paul. Good things are coming.
I love it, and I think I'm listening to that. We all should be taking advice from others anyway. But I was only this morning thinking about a particular curveball that crossed my path not that long ago, but long enough for me to have no emotional attachment to it, which is important because there is something that we do give it its attention. But as a consequence of that curveball, something very good has come of it. Okay. If you'd asked me at the time of that curveball, were I happy about it? Absolutely not. Yeah, whatever. Black day. Tomorrow's white day, today's black day. But without that, a certain set of circumstances wouldn't have happened that I'm very happy about, you know. So it was only this morning when I was reflecting on a particular curveball that I actually felt gratitude for it.
Yeah.
So there became an emotion, and it was a positive emotion.
Yeah.
Oh, that. You
Be
know?
grateful for the curveballs.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you did enjoy it, had lots of takeaways from it. As before, please subscribe below so you can keep on top of any new releases we have. And also, if you would like to have your story told, just reach out with me and I'd love to give you that platform. My best email address is tom@purplepatchconsulting.com. Thank you.